Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve 2. Today we have Kendra Cook with us. She is a U.S. Army veteran, advocate, and community leader dedicated to serving those who have served. She currently works as a military service officer for Bexar County, so that is in San Antonio, Texas, where she assists veterans and their families in navigating VA benefits, accessing resources, helping with transitions and employment, and overcoming barriers to stability. She also serves as the vice president of a nonprofit organization that empowers women veterans, first responders, and military families through outdoor healing, peer connections, and mental health support. Kendra has also been a featured panelist for several veteran-focused organizations, including the Wounded Warrior Project, where she shares insight into the unique challenges women veterans face during transition and reintegration. Her work reflects a deep commitment to ensuring women veterans are seen, heard, and supported, both in policy and in practice. With a focus on compassion, connection, and impact, Kendra continues to be a voice for change in the veteran community. So Kendra, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So one of the things that I like for the women to start off with is just tell us a little bit about your journey through the military.
Okay. So to be honest with you, I chose the Army just because my grandpa was in the Army. I was raised by my grandparents for the most part. And to me, it was just kind of a natural choice to join the Army. I really didn't even look into other branches. And when I joined the Army, I went in as a combat medic and I knew what that meant, but I honestly had no clue what that was going to entail for my career. It was super rewarding. My very first unit was with a CASH. I was with a combat support hospital. And I was there for a little while until I found out that there was an opportunity for me to switch to an engineer brigade that was getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan. So I went with them and kind of began my career more as an official line medic. And I will tell you, as a woman, it was very interesting because I was attached to a bunch of sappers. And they were not used to having women in their units. They were not used to having women, especially attached to the platoon, because I was the girl on the platoon. That was it. So, they put me through the ringer, but in all of the best of ways, I guess I could say. And through there, I grew with them. I stayed with them for quite a while until I transitioned to Hawaii, where I took over as a non-commissioned officer in charge of a health clinic there, which was day and night difference from being a line medic with sappers and combat engineers. And I was there and I mostly ran the pediatric clinic. And then I moved into operations and I ended my career at Fort Sam Houston here in San Antonio, Texas, as a instructor with the combat medics. So all the trainees that were coming through to learn how to do trauma medicine and navigate that world, we got to train. And that was a really challenging experience for me because it was at the height of COVID. So we had to navigate taking hands-on trauma training to the first time ever virtual training and teach these soldier medics how to treat bleed online so that, when they went to their units, they were still prepared to go to war, which some of them were immediately. So it's been interesting. It's been challenging, but it's been great. I still miss it every single day.
So how many years did you do? Did you do your 20 and retire?
So I got medically retired due to an injury I sustained in combat. So it was cut just a little bit short.
I know there's a lot of questions as far as that goes. With you medically retired, what does that look like for your retirement package?
So it really depends. You can be medically retired and just really receive nothing other than TRICARE. I won't say I'm lucky, but because mine was due to an injury I received in combat, I qualified for CRSC. So I'm still able to draw a retirement check. It's not quite as much as it would be if I'd made the full 20, but it's still pretty substantial and pretty close. So it really depends. If it's combat related, you can draw like a retirement paycheck through the DoD. But if it's just a medical thing that happens during your career, then that is not a qualification for you, unfortunately.
That's so interesting because I think there's so much misinformation out there, and I love that you're helping veterans kind of navigate that. But before we talk about kind of all of those benefits, let's talk a little bit about that military journey. How important was mentorship during your journey? Because you were talking about just essentially being the only woman. And I know for some of the other women that I've talked to, that's always been kind of a very challenging part of their military journey. So, did you find someone that kind of helped make a difference for you? And then, how could someone potentially find someone in that situation?
Yeah, I will say through my military career, if it wasn't for the mentorship I had found, I don't think I would have made it through some of those, what I call my seasons of my journey through the military. Funny enough, I'm originally from a very, very small town in West Virginia called Clarksburg. And my first sergeant in my unit also happened to be from West Virginia, the same little small town. And him and I really bonded. And he really kind of took me under his wing. First Sergeant Tanner, I still keep in contact with him today, and really guided me through the process and kind of helped me navigate things in a way that I don't think I would have been able to do as well without him really showing that to me and helping. But the important thing about his mentorship was he didn't baby me. He really kind of was like, okay, like, come on, Cook, we got to do this. You're from West Virginia. I know you're running outside with no shoes on, getting dirty, right? You got to look at this the same way, right? So he kind of brought me out of my shell and made me think about being more than just the only girl there, thinking about being Kendra. And I think that's really important when you're looking for a mentor. I think you really need to focus on finding somebody that your values align with, somebody that looks at the world the same way you do. And you really shouldn't dwell too much on rank or gender or even job description, because if they align with you and they align with your values, they're going to help you grow in the way that you really need to grow.
So, how did he help you grow through specifically a tough time? Like, how important was that mentor for you?
So, speaking of him specifically, there was a time. So, my son is autistic. And at the time, he was still really young. He was, I think, 5, and he was not nonverbal, but he was struggling. I'll say that. And he was going through a new program at school, just trying to be able to adapt to school. And at the same time, we had a field training exercise come up where I knew I was going to be away for 6 weeks. And that really affected me because as a woman, it's hard to sometimes step away from that role of mom or wife. And I was really battling. I was kind of going into depression. Like, how do I leave my kid this most fragile time of their life, And he once again stepped aside from that first sergeant role. I was only a specialist at the time, so I was an E4, and he brought me into his family. He brought me and my kids and my husband over his house, had his wife meet me, and essentially had his wife step in and be me for that 6 weeks while we were gone. And to me, that was so valuable because a lot of people get caught up on rank or position or, I shouldn't do this because my role says no. But he saw me through that mentorship lens as a person and as a human that needed help in that moment and stepped outside of his comfort zone to make sure my family was taken okay. And that really stuck with me throughout my military career. And I think even now as a civilian, because I try to treat people the same way. I always, even as a senior leader in the Army, I always carried those values forward and didn't get so stuck up on, what rank they were or what positions told me. I just followed my heart and said, as a person and as a leader, what should I do? So I'm forever grateful for him for that.
And I think that's like a key takeaway here too is people first,
Yeah.
right? Like if you take care of your people, they're going to take care of you. And at the end of the day, we're all humans. And it shouldn't matter what rank it is because we should always put people first.
Absolutely.
So what kind of like support systems or resources, because it sounds like you had like an amazing mentor and a lot of people don't have that support when they're in. So with that being said, if someone can't find that amazing mentor or just someone that they can rely on, what kinds of support systems or resources are absolutely necessary for women who are serving?
Wow, I think that's kind of a loaded question because I think some of the biggest problem is a lot of those resources I feel are lacking. A lot of them aren't really there because, especially, in the Army, we had the FRG, which, kind of got the wives together, the spouses together, the families together, but it doesn't really build the true rapport that a lot of people need. And, they do have different things that they do on the bases, but nothing that I think really fills that role, which is why I think it's really important that the external resources step in, whether that's, your nonprofits, your local government entities, your city entities, to fill that gap for mentorship or just support, just having those resources to be able to have somebody you can always come back to. Because once again, I think that's what's lacking. I think a lot of, especially women in the military, feel that they don't have the support system they need. They don't have somebody that understands those different roles that they wear. And not that men don't wear roles. I know they do, but I feel as women, we are naturally just ingrained to be different, right? We really take that role of mom so seriously, or wife or friend. And that's why there's so many good, especially here in San Antonio, the different nonprofits that support women through their journeys, whether that's with just being a mom and how do I navigate that? What are some resources I have to take care of my children? What are some resources that are here that can help me and my family get out and do things, especially if we are a junior enlisted and the paychecks are small, right? So we've got those resources here that kind of help them do things that they wouldn't be able to do with their families. MST. We've got a lot of great nonprofits here in county and city entities that help with, MST. So to answer your question, I don't think there is a specific resource. I think that's something that's lacking, but I think there's a lot of great resources that can fill in the gaps. But I also think that the different military branches need to do they need to find a better way of understanding that the service members know that those resources are here. Because one thing I find is that a lot of military installations here are very hesitant about letting any kind of nonprofit onto the base to kind of pitch what they do. And I understand that to an extent. However, how can your service members know what's here to help them if you don't let them pitch that?
Why do you think they're so hesitant?
One, I think, is because I think it's almost protective, right? So I can understand it to an extent. They don't probably have the proper processes in place to be able to vet a lot of people. So that's something that could be worked on. What's a process we can do to vet these people to come in and speak? Because it's not hard, right? And I think another reason is lack of knowledge, or lack of, I don't want to say maybe knowledge, but I don't think that a lot of people in military installations truly understand, because when it comes to processes like that, it's a lot of civilians and a lot of civilians who've never served. So I think they just don't understand the importance of it. And that's something I'm currently working on right now. I'm kind of embedded in Lackland Air Force Base with their MFRC and some different units, trying to bridge that gap. But it's going to take a little while, I think, to get there.
So I'm kind of glad that you mentioned Lackland, because, right, is the gateway to the Air Force. Yeah. Everyone has to come to San Antonio, at least on the enlisted side, because that's how I started my journey. I was Air Force, had to come straight to San Antonio. And it's Military City, USA, right? That's what everyone calls San Antonio. And you mentioned a lot of nonprofits that support this community. Can you speak on some of those organizations so people who are listening can be aware?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a shameless plug. The nonprofit I work for, Warrior Diva Outdoors, we focus on female veterans, but also female first responders, female law enforcement agencies, because sometimes we focus solely on veterans and we forget the other branch. They serve too, right? Our law enforcement, they're serving our constituents here. So are our first responders through outdoors healing. So we try to just get out and about in the nature, build a community where people can kind of just come together and talk. There's also Women's Veterans Calendar here. She does a lot of great things, just recognizing, the women here in San Antonio, and just once again, building that community, that support, the rapport here that they have. Grace Under Fire is another great nonprofit here that has really taken their time to get to know the needs of the female veterans here and to see how they can help them. So they have a lot of get-togethers they do as well too, but they also have a lot of great resources for not only financial aid if you need it, but like financial literacy. They're a great resource. I could probably ramble about them all day. Also too, it's not a nonprofit, but Bexar County, where I work, our department has a lot of great resources here for veterans and active duty that for some reason a lot of people don't know about. We have a peer support program in my department. And what we do with that is we just try to really focus on getting camaraderie within San Antonio and Bexar County in general, right? Especially those transitioning service members who are leaving service and they're trying to find their new identity and are struggling. So we just get them together, whether that's hunting, fishing, hiking. We've taken women on spa days, rage rooms, horse therapy. I mean, just lots of fun ways just to really make people realize they're not alone. And we have a financial aid assistance program too, where if a veteran here in Bexar County is struggling or active duty, they can come to us if they fall behind on rent, mortgage, utilities, need a car repair. And what sets us apart is they don't already have to have an eviction notice or foreclosure notice. And I'm really trying to spread a word about that because we say 22 a day, 22 a day, but what are we doing to prevent that, right? So our organization has said, hey, before you get to the point of a foreclosure or a shut off, we're here for you. So all you have to do is come self-report and kind of say, hey, if you don't help me, I could be facing these struggles. We'll help you. No repayment. And like I said, just trying to catch the veteran before they get to that point. So there's lots of great resources here in Bexar County. It's just getting people to know that they're there.
So, kind of going back to your organization, I've been following because we just PCS to San Antonio 2 months ago. So we're like brand spanking new, clearly. But I've been following the Women's Veterans of San Antonio, that organization. And I know they were posting a little bit about your program, the Outdoor Warrior Diva.
Yeah, Warrior Diva Outdoors, yes.
And that's pretty new, isn't it?
It is pretty new. So we're not having, so right now we're just kind of building that community, getting people together, planning some small little events to get together, but we're not having our first initial inaugural kickoff event until October. And the reason for that is Pam, who's our president, her mother and her sister both unfortunately passed away of breast cancer young. Pam and I both have the BRCA gene, which means it's pretty when we will get breast cancer and not if we will get breast cancer. So October is a very special month for us. October will be our big inaugural event so that she can really dedicate this nonprofit to her sister and mother. And from there, the ball will be rolling. But yes, like I said, right now, we're just really trying to get that community together, trying to build that rapport, trying to let people know they're not alone.
What is like your long-term vision for this? Because I know you mentioned outdoor healing. And again, I've been following this on LinkedIn for a while. And I'm currently doing a physical therapy rotation where, I see a lot of veterans. And, I was talking to an older female veteran and this was before I saw the announcement for your nonprofit. And
Yep.
she was like, I'm looking for something that connects me with other female veterans in an outdoor setting.
Yes.
And once I saw that on your post on LinkedIn, I was like, oh my God, I screenshotted it. I sent it to her. So there is essentially a need and there's such a want, especially with outdoors and just other female veterans wanting that camaraderie. But what do you envision your organization doing, say, in the next year to 5 years?
So within the next, year to 5 years, so honestly, we're undecided. And I'll just be very honest with you, right? Because we've already had some other states reach out to us and be like, hey, we don't have anything like this in our state that's just women focused, just outdoor focused. Are you looking to expand? And as of right now, we're really undecided because part of us is like, well, yeah, of course, right? That's the dream. But the other part of us is like, we really just want to stay close to home because this is where our heart is, right? And we feel like we could probably do a bigger impact and do more if we just stay here. So as far as the 5-year plan, we're really kind of undecided. We're just really going to pray on it. We're all huge on faith and see where God leaves that. But for the next year, we're really just hoping to have a group of, at least a solid, hopefully 30 to 50 females here in San Antonio, Bexar County, that we can just get together, whether that's we take them out to a cocktail night, in between events, or we say, hey, let's go for a hike. But the biggest thing we really want within the next year is just have that community, right? Because for us, we're not successful unless these women have a place where they can go to and say, hey, I'm hurting, right? Or, hey, I just need something. And have a group of women where maybe we don't have something planned for that weekend, but somebody just comes out and says, hey, I'm really struggling. This is maybe a anniversary of something that happened to me, or I just had a trigger. And we have that community where we say, okay, cool. You know what? We're meeting tomorrow morning, Saturday. We're going to go for a hike. Or, Pam just closed on a house down on Rockport, which we'll be using for a lot of things for the nonprofit as well. Or, hey, so-and-so is really struggling. We're going to get in the van. We're going to go and we're going to go down and spend a weekend on the river, on the lake, so that's really what it is. It's more about just building that community within the next year. It's not really about money or goals or anything. It's just having that community where women just know they are not alone ever.
So with your job as a military service officer and you also doing this nonprofit, how are you kind of intertwining those two? Because I know a lot of people don't obviously know the VA resources and they have a hard time navigating the VA. So are you trying to kind of align a little bit, or you just kind of keep it separate and then just tell people who are navigating the VA system, hey, I also have this option?
So no, I mean, I'm trying really hard to merge the two in the most professional way. Where I struggle a little bit is because a lot of our possible funding can come through the county, through our commissioners or different programs. And I don't want to muddy that water for the nonprofit. So I have to be a little careful how far I step into certain things. But as far as the resources I have and the skill set I have, no, I'm 100% intertwining those, and I can. So that is something that I will definitely make sure everybody that comes to our nonprofit knows. Hey, this is a skill set I have. These are resources I have. Please let me know. And if I can't help you, I definitely have probably the resources that can. Because right now, I'd say work with roughly 100 different nonprofits. So if I can't point you in the right direction, then I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, that's a lot in your black book right there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about navigating VA and navigating VA benefits. What do you see a lot of female veterans struggling with the most with navigating those benefits?
I would say navigating the benefits. So especially here in San Antonio, I would say Bexar County specifically, I think navigating those benefits, one of the hardest things I see for females is finding a female veteran service officer that can help them file their claim, because there's so few of them. And when it comes to us women, sometimes, and I'll say the majority, want a female that they can go to because, especially if there's MST, they're not really comfortable talking to that with a male. Or even, I see a lot that comes in the office that just have, maybe they're in the field a lot or during deployment. So they've had multiple, maybe UTIs or, infections in places that they're not really comfortable sharing with men. And a lot of them are really struggling to find places that have females for them to speak to. So I think that's a huge need that the VA needs to recognize, and local organizations here need to recognize as well, whether that's my organization, Bexar County, the DAV, TVC. I think that's something they all need to step up and do, is make more female representation available so that our female veterans aren't waiting so long to have a female to talk to.
What do you see as like one of the most underutilized benefit that we don't know about but are entitled to us?
So I would say surprisingly, it's an education benefit. A lot of people don't know about the VRNE, the voc rehab benefit, which really, really surprises me, just because you only have to have 10% to qualify for it. And yeah. And so with the voc rehab is, it's a little different than the GI Bill, because the GI Bill I can go to school and use for whatever I want to use it for. It's my benefit. With the voc rehab, it does have to be centered around your future career goals. So for instance, if I want to be a graphic designer, obviously, I have to have a career goal for that, have a session with the VA voc rehab counselor to do that. So it's more end goal for employment focused than your GI Bill is, but it pays the exact same benefits. You get the exact same monthly GI Bill housing stipend. You get the exact same school stipend when it comes to like books, supplies. And what actually makes it a little bit better is it will actually pay for things you need for school. So for instance, it'll buy you a brand new laptop, a printer. If you're going to like a school, let's say graphic design, if you're going to school to be a graphic design, it'll buy you a camera, it'll buy you all the supplies you need, whereas the GI Bill does not do that. And it's always so surprising to me, people that don't know that resource is available to them, and we always meet with people when they say they want to use their GI Bill, and hey, do you know about this program? Because it lets them save that GI Bill and use it on the back end for anything that they just choose to go to school for. So I think that's one of the most underutilized benefits, at least here in San Antonio, that I see.
Yeah, I think someone in a previous episode mentioned the vocational one,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize that they would pay also like the resources
Yes.
to help you along. And that's amazing.
Yeah. Anything you need that you can get your guidance counselor or your school to say, hey, to be successful, the student needs this. No questions asked.
Dang, that's amazing. So let's talk about going from like military to civilian. How do you help, especially particularly females, kind of navigate like kind of employment and essentially that next chapter in their life?
So I think one of the biggest things that we really do is we sit down and kind of help them obviously rewrite their resume, just not just females, but females too. I think it's a hard thing for a lot of people to put that military mindset aside and now go back to being a person, right? So once you're in the military for so long, you officially gets ingrained in you like, I'm not a female, I'm not a female, I'm not a female, I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, right? As they transition out, sometimes that's hard to put back on that hat of no, it's okay. Like now I'm Kendra, I'm a mom, I'm this next step. So when I have a female that's transitioning out, like I said, I'm embedded in Lackland, so I deal with a lot of transitioning service members from there. One of the first things that we always do is just sit down and say, like, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? And that's sometimes the hardest thing to make them really sit down and think about because they don't know. For so long, they've just been an airman or just a soldier. So we sit down, we have that conversation, and then we help them obviously do the job search and kind of figure out, well, what do I need to do to get there? Because a lot of people, when they're coming out of the military, they don't want to do the same thing they did in the military. So how do we bridge that gap? So that's kind of what we sit down and we look at. It's okay, what's that education piece you're missing, or what's that training you're missing? And we sit down and go over the programs available. Like, I don't know if you know, there's a program here called Cavalry Program in San Antonio. It's free for veterans, but it gets people all their entry level project management certifications. Yeah, making starting pay is usually roughly, let's say, 65,000 or something like that, right? So we sit down and go over different programs like that to help them kind of bridge that gap so that they can go back to focusing on just being who they were outside of uniform without having to worry about how they're going to pay the bills or keep up with their normal life, right? Take that stress off of them. So now that they can just be Kendra or whoever. So that's kind of what we do. We help them navigate that piece, see what's going to be for them. We also connect them with the resources available. So that's one of the first things I always sit down and ask them. Hey, do you have kids? Do you have a husband? Do you have issues like with paying your rent, your mortgage, your car payments? Like where can we help you bridge that gap? So we always do that kind of intake. And then unfortunately, we don't really have like a job placement in Bexar County, which is something we are trying to work on, is to getting more organizations on board with direct placements for veterans, right? Like trying to build a relationship to say, hey, I've got this veteran here who qualifies specifically for this job. Can you review the resume? Right now, that's hard because so many companies just don't want to do that. However, that's why we are out and about all the time, playing politicians, shaking hands, kissing babies, trying to build those connections so that if you do come into my office and you're transitioning out, I can at least maybe shoot an email and try to help bridge that gap. But it's definitely something we gotta be better about here in Bexar County, is taking care of our veterans.
Yeah, I will say networking is such a huge thing because you never know who someone knows, and you could easily help someone by just networking. And
Yeah.
I always think networking is such a key skill that I think everyone needs to try to implement and try to put yourself out there so you can network.
It's
So
hard though. It's hard for some people. I
it
will say,
is,
not
it
about
is.
everyone, but it is. It's integral. Yeah.
Yes. I consider myself more of an introvert, so it is extremely hard for me to go out in like bigger settings. Like
Yeah.
I'm okay with like a small setting, but like the bigger setting, it's more overwhelming for me. So I mean I get it, but I also know the importance of, yes, you have to network because what's the saying, your network is your net worth.
Yes. Yes. And it's so true. I mean, 100% true here.
You also mentioned, and I wanted to see if you had any resources. So I've talked to a lot of veterans where when they do transition from military to civilian, they lose their sense of self. They lose their identity. Do you have any resources or suggestions on how people can kind of get back to being that individual?
I mean, I don't think there's one specific resource, but I think it just comes to, once again, getting out there, finding those communities. I know there's there's another nonprofit here called Frontline Heroes. Frontline Heroes Outdoors. They do a lot of great things. Once again, just kind of building that community, getting things together like that. Like I said, our peer support program is here to do that. It's just, unfortunately, there's not one specific organization I could think of that does, because they all have such unique things. My biggest thing is somebody's transitioning out and they're looking for something to do that. I would just highly recommend them to go into LinkedIn or Facebook and kind of look, because there's so many, whether you like the outdoors or you're specific for hunting, you're specific for fishing. There's some nonprofits that focus more on the arts, but I would say your biggest thing is just knowing who to ask or what resources to reach out to for those connections. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Kaysen. He's here in San Antonio. He's a huge veteran advocate. So if anybody ever is looking for a connection for anything like that, I would suggest reach out to Mark Kaysen on LinkedIn. He used to work for Wounded Warrior Project. Now he works for TWC. It's funny because everybody says it's not a veterans event if Mark Kaysen wasn't there taking his selfies. I definitely suggest everybody follow Mark Kaysen on LinkedIn. You will find a place for you through his posts for sure.
I love that. So, with being a military service officer, do you work with the VA or do you work separately? Like, how can people find essentially you and then also find other military service? Because obviously we're talking a lot about San Antonio, but for those who are listening and be like, I want these resources, like how could they also find like a military service officer?
So you could Google your city or state and you could look for a veteran service officer, which is a VSO. Those are going to be more specific, catered to just VA benefits. Or you could also look for a military service officer in your city or state, and they're going to be a little bit more broad on some of the things that they're able to do. But I think also if you connect with a veteran service officer, MSO, VSO on LinkedIn or Facebook, most of us have a wealth of resources. So if you were to reach out, if you're a district, city, state, you can feel free to reach out to me even on LinkedIn. Tell me where you're at, what you're looking for, and I could put those feelers out and get it back to you. Because as small as you would think the veteran population is, it's also huge, right? It's spread out. So, I mean, I think I said that backward. As big as it is, it's also very small, right? So as many as there are, it's a small group of people. So we all know somebody that knows somebody somewhere. So just reach out and ask, and we'll help pull you in the right direction.
So, because you kind of hit on it a little bit, and maybe I'm just naive to the terms. So, the military service officer is different than a VSO.
Yeah. So a VSO is specifically going to be for your VA benefit claims. So if you're looking to file, whether that's your initial claim, an appeal, maybe you want to do an increase, that's when you're going to go specifically see a VSO. So your VSO is going to be specifically for your VA claims. So they can help you with that. Now they will also have resources as well, but their job specifically is going to be your VA benefit claim. Whereas your MSO is a little bit more broad. So we have, that wealth of knowledge on your VA claim benefit questions. So you could come and ask me questions. If I don't know it, I'll contact one of them. I actually started out on the benefits side and switched to the MSO side. So I'm a little more well-rounded, I think, but your typical MSO is going to have a broad knowledge base on your veterans claims, but they're not going to be able to file your veterans claims. They're going to be able to kind of help navigate the rest of that for you.
How does someone become like a VSO and an MSO? For anyone who is interested in wanting to help other veterans?
Yeah, so it's really not that hard. Most of the times they require you have a 4-year degree, but they do waive that most places if you have leadership experience, especially within the military, because they're just really looking to make sure that somebody is able to handle like strong personalities and caseloads, because we have veterans that come in from all walks of life, right? So we might have, a 90-year-old World War II veteran, which has happened, clear up to a young kid with anger issues or PTSD, right? So they really just want to see that you've got some kind of leadership capability behind you, because it's not always easy dealing with all those different personality types. And then other than that, you can really just look up your city and your state and look for those positions. They are usually hiring pretty frequently because we're expanding frequently, not just here in Bexar County or even in Texas. Almost everywhere I look, it's exploding, right? They're needing more and more people. So I would just recommend you just kind of look on your city or state or county websites for those positions and apply. There's usually not a whole list of qualifications until after you get hired. And then they send you through the training specifically for the VA just to get those credentials under your belt.
Is it like a full-time job, or can someone volunteer to do it like part-time or like on the weekends?
So it depends where you live. Here, it's a full time job. However, some of the smaller cities and counties do have part time VSOs. I mean, it really just depends what you're looking for. We have some people here in San Antonio that actually travel to smaller counties just because they don't want to do it full time. So, yeah, both options are available. It just depends on the organization.
Like I said, I didn't realize that there really was a difference. I kind of thought they were like interchangeable. So I'm so glad I asked that question, because I would have had no idea,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, it's a lot to navigate because there's so many little intricate pieces to it, you know. And then depending on the organization, so for instance, Wounded Warrior Project, they have like the same kind of things, but they call them a different name. So, you know, they have, if somebody's really looking to get to work with veterans and they don't have a position open within your state or your county, I definitely suggest looking for Wounded Warrior Project. They are hiring quite a lot too, and they've got some really cool positions that come open quite frequently with them. Just especially if you're looking for a position where you get to get out and do things with veterans a lot, Wounded Warrior Project is a great organization to work for as well.
Because we're talking about a lot about like resources and nonprofits, stuff like that. If someone was kind of brand new to the military, what would be a piece of advice you would give that person starting out?
So I actually, my daughter, well, she just got out of the military. She did 7 years, but she went in at 17. And my biggest piece of advice to her starting out, and what I told all my soldiers is get to know everybody and everybody's job. Right. So many people going into the military, they kind of go on with these blinders on, just because of the rank structure or the way the jobs are set up, you know, that they kind of stay in their lane and they don't get to expand themselves as much as they do. So my suggestion would be get to know everybody in your unit, get to know their jobs, don't stay in your bubble, right? Because you have to realize that as you're going through the military, you're growing as a person, as a professional as well, and you can't do that with those blinders on. So, you know, some of my biggest growth, and I think my daughter's growth and other people that I've seen grow throughout their military, is because they did that. They stepped out of their bubble. They got to know people. They got to see kind of a broader vision of what the military was than if they would have just stayed in their little section or their little office. And that made them so much more well-rounded. So as they progressed through their military career, kind of like you said earlier, and especially in the Army, I'm not sure for the Air Force, but I know in the Army, it's also very much your net worth is your network, you know, vice versa. So just do that. Get out of your bubble, get to know everybody, just make the best of it. It's such a great experience if you let it be that way.
What should young soldiers, airmen, young service members take advantage of in their first few years of military service?
Definitely the TA. I'm pretty sure the Air Force has it too, where you can go to college, right? So take advantage of that. I don't know why so many people don't. They don't take advantage of that program. And then when they get out and they transition out, it's a reality check, right? Especially let's say somebody does 4 or 5 years and they transition out and they have this idea of like, well, I was an NCO, I was a sergeant, I'm going to get this great paying job, right? People were going to revere me because I was in the military, and it's just not the reality, right? So I just say take advantage of that TA, get some college under your belt, get some certifications under your belt. Take advantage of any schools you can. You know, so many times, you know, people will offer schools to go to, and people don't want to do it because they're like, oh, whatever, it's a pain in the butt, or they don't want to go through the hassle. No, take those schools, take every opportunity for any education you have while you're there, whether it's college or just a school through the military, because that can translate onto a resume. A lot of people don't realize that whether you go to leadership schools or MFTs or master resiliency trainers, whatever those schools that are offered, they can transfer onto a resume as well. So just take advantage of it. Even if you just do 4 or 5 years, even if you just do 3 years, you could come out with a great resume if you take advantage of that stuff.
I'm going to preach on that, because I've gone to school and I've used so much education benefits. Even the government is like, okay, you're tapped out. Like, they even sent me a letter that I was like, oh, okay, I better hurry up with this degree. But when I was in, I would take advantage of that TA. So unless it has changed, every October 1st is when it gets reset. So the fiscal year. And you get, when I was in, it was 4,500. So 6 classes if you went to AMU, so American Military University, which is all online, which is what I did. And that's $4,500
Yes.
like every year that you could just do. It helps build your resume, like you said. You could start knocking out your bachelor's degree, or if you wanted to knock out, I know the Air Force has the Community College of the Air Force. You could start working towards your degree while you're in by taking one class every 2 months. And it's really not that much, and it's just you're leaving free money out there. Another thing I think a lot of military members don't take advantage of is the CLEPs and the Dantes.
Yes.
So those are free for military members. And say you know math very, very well. You could CLEP out of math and you do not have to pay for that math class. And it's awarded credit. I mean, when I was a young airman, I was like CLEPing everything. I was like, it's free. I was like, if I don't get it, that's fine. I'll take the class. And it's something that I do think not a lot of people talk about.
Yes, I agree. And it just, like I said, transition's not as easy as people think it is, so just set yourself up for success. Even if you don't know what you're going to do when you grow up and you get out, you'll have something you can fall on while you figure it out.
Yeah, I also want to caveat on that too, because I think it's a frequent conversation. So my husband is still military. My brother-in-law just retired. They thought that the transition was going to be a lot easier. And my brother-in-law is still currently trying to find a job.
Yeah.
And there's probably other factors that go in it, but they both were very, let's just say, oh, well, I'm a veteran. I'll get a job real quick and da da da. And I'm like, I've been out for a little bit. I'm like, it's not like that. You have a little more spark to it. Yeah, that you are a veteran, but it's not as easy as a lot of people think it is.
No, especially here, I'll be very honest. Something we're starting to realize is that a lot of people, and this is going to be controversial, but I'm just going to say it because it's true. We've actually had some hiring managers say that some people could view veterans as almost a check against them because, especially their career field, right? So are they going to have PTSD? Are they going to have anger issues? Are they going to miss work a lot because, they have VA appointments, right? So that's why it's really important that you are able to set yourself apart from being just a veteran, which is hard for a lot of people to do. When we do some of the resumes, they still want to put like first sergeant or tech sergeant. And I'm like, well, first of all, hiring manager has no clue what that means. But second of all, it's important that you show them that you have an identity outside of that, because that's the last thing you want is them having just this preconceived notion of just you as that person, because that comes with the good, but also the bad.
I never actually thought about it that way. It kind of like the negative side, the catch-22,
Yes.
because you are right. Like, depending on if they do have a bunch of VA or mental health. And I will always say this and preach till I die, mental health is still health. And like, obviously take care of that. But it is something that, because I don't think there is enough support as far as that goes on like the mental health side.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to kind of think of how that could reflect on trying to get a job on the civilian side.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing. And especially be a woman veteran with that. I mean, we've literally had hiring managers where I've called and I've said, hey, I just want to check, did you happen to get so-and-so's resume that I sent you? And I mean, they're not supposed to tell you certain things, right? But once you build a rapport with certain people, sometimes they're very honest, right? Yeah, but she's got these appointments. It looks like I'm a little afraid. She's got two small kids. And, so it's a very unfortunate thing that should not be happening, but it still happens. So it's just really, really important that we're just making ourselves as strong as we can, as well-rounded as we can, and that we know the resources out there. So if things like that do happen, we know who do I go to help to fight that,
So before we kind of wrap it up, obviously as women, childcare always tends to be on us.
Yes.
So first question is, do you have resources or ways to help women find childcare? Because I know when we first moved here, it was extremely hard to find. And I have 4 kids, so I mean, that's its own barrier.
Right.
But
Good for you.
yeah. Childcare. So childcare was a huge issue for us. And just if I was a single mom, like, I don't even know what I would have done. But especially for people transitioning or female vets, like, do you have any resources for either single moms or people who are trying to navigate, trying to find childcare?
So there are some resources here in San Antonio. I don't remember off the top of my head, but anybody can feel free to reach out to me, after this podcast that hears it, and I could direct them. But there are a couple of resources here in San Antonio that do help with things like childcare. Unfortunately, the wait list can be kind of long, so that is its own hurdle, but there are resources here to help with that stuff. And then for colleges, if you're looking to go back to get education and you're having childcare issues, Alamo colleges has some different resources available to have daycare for you while you go to school. So I think that's pretty cool because as far as I know, they're the only college around here that does anything like that, provides daycare.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of colleges could benefit from doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then my second question was, because you also mentioned the 22 a day
Yeah.
and trying to prevent that. And I know, actually, I think it was Wall Street just posted an article about the VA and their lack of services as far as mental health goes. What resources or suggestions say if a veteran is to that point, what should they do?
So, I mean, yeah, the VA is definitely got a long way to come with that. I don't think a lot of people do know, but if you do call the VA and they're trying to prolong your VA mental health appointments, just make sure you ask one for community care, right? That can get you out there faster. Or if you're honest and tell them that you might be having those issues, they're supposed to front load you to get you in much quicker. And a lot of people don't know to ask for that. But once again, that still does not even always happen. Specifically here in Bexar County in Texas, I know there's a lot of nonprofits that help with things like that. There's Endeavors, which is a local organization here that helps with mental health issues. You don't pay anything out of pocket. Once again, our organization, Bexar County Department of Military Veteran Services, we have a licensed social worker who can do some one-on-one. It's not super in depth, but a lot of times it'll hold that veteran over until they can get to see their actual psychiatrist or therapist, and point them to more in-depth resources if needed. But I think that is something that, yeah, I think you could probably do a whole podcast on, honestly, right? Just because I'll be very, very honest, I was actually one of the statistics. When I transitioned out, I attempted suicide, and thankfully my husband found me in time. I'm still here today to try to make the world a better place for veterans, right? My biggest thing is if you are in that situation and, they say the Veterans Crisis Hotline, I don't know how effective that really is. I know for me, it wouldn't have been that effective because I need more, I guess, individual care than just somebody on the phone that I've never talked to. It might get you through that quick 30 seconds where you're making that life or death decision. But I would just say, just Google your area. Like I said, here, if you're in San Antonio, Bexar County, I know there's Endeavors. I know there's us. I know there's other mental health resources available through some nonprofits here. Once again, if you're here, or even if you're not here and you hear this podcast clear across the country, if you ever connect with me, I'm sure I can connect you to those resources because it's just something that we gotta do better with.
Yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about, trying to bring awareness because, we always say 22 a day, but you're right. Like, what are we doing to prevent it? And what are we doing to help?
Yeah.
Like, we need to get those numbers down.
Yeah,
Like,
more than
dramatically.
just a hotline, to call.
Absolutely. Girl. With that being said, how can people get in contact with you?
So the easiest way to probably get in contact with me is through LinkedIn. I'm just Kendra Cook on LinkedIn. That's where I post a lot of different things. I think doing this podcast probably brought a lot of things to my eyes, things I don't share more. So I'm going to make that a note to be sharing more things like those mental health resources and childcare resources and things like that on there, because I think it's one of those things. I have my little Rolodex at work if somebody comes in and needs that, but I'm really glad you brought those specific things up because I need to be better about sharing those resources instead of gatekeeping in case somebody asks for me. But yeah, I would say Kendra Cook on LinkedIn is probably going to be the best way. And anybody can feel free to reach out with me at any time from anywhere.
Yeah, and I think us veterans need to stick together, and especially as female veterans, because there are certain things that, when I first started this podcast, people were afraid that I was going to be man bashing. And I was like, no, it's not that. There are certain barriers that women kind of have to deal with because we are the ones that, childcare, it comes onto us and certain other aspects like that. So us women also have to stick together. So I will put that in the show notes as far as your LinkedIn. Kendra, I do appreciate you coming onto the show today and sharing kind of your wealth of knowledge. What is one key takeaway that you wish people would take home with?
I guess the one key takeaway I would take home is just that you're not alone. right? No matter if you're here in San Antonio, Bexar County, or anywhere in the world, there are resources available. Get out of your house, right? Especially as veterans, especially as female veterans, get out of your house, right? It's cool you're a mom, it's cool you're a wife, but you still got to be, you got to be Kendra, you got to be whoever. Get out of your house, make those connections, make sure that you are taking care of yourself and taking care of the people around you. And you can't do that if you're isolating. So just get out there, make a difference, right? Because you might be the person that somebody needs. You might have that story or that connection that somebody needs, right? You might not even realize what you have to offer to people you're going to come.